Alrighty, so this is week 9 college football playoff rankings, according to me, basically. So for number 25, we have Duke, which I feel like some people might think that is kind of be a little harsh on them, but I don't know. It's just they kind of lost it in the second half there against Florida State, so I feel like number 25 can be reasonable. And then for number 24, we have Tulane coming in. Going 6-1, which I have no idea who their even other losses to. Like, let me check that because I'm kind of confused about that one. Okay, so Tulane's losses to Ole Miss, which that I remember that. That makes more sense. So that I think they do kind of deserve a rank spot at 24. Now, Louisville, I've seen some people thinking that they should be a little higher, but I don't know. I kind of disagree with that. As Louisville, they might have beat Notre Dame, but it was at Louisville too, and it's Notre Dame. They're not, I mean, Notre Dame's good and all, but I don't know. But then they're losing to Pittsburgh is really what got me having them have to drop so low because they kind of got wrecked by Pittsburgh at the end of that. Ended up getting wrecked, and that was not looking good on them. Then North Carolina, that was embarrassing. Just straight up embarrassing to lose like that to Virginia, who is really the worst they've been in years I've seen. So I think it's deserved from the drop a lot. And then we have Oklahoma State, which isn't ranked in the AP or coaches poll, but I feel like they've had two great wins, one against Kansas State and then West Virginia, so they get ranked for me. Now, moving on, we got number 20 is USC, the Trojans, who are 6-2, which just come off a loss against Utah, which I think this is deserving too of them. Caleb Williams hasn't really done good. I don't even think he'll get Heisman at this point if USC continues to play like this. Number 19, we have UCLA going 5-2. They played not that bad of a season so far. At this point, best bet is maybe they go 10-3, right, or 9. Well, including bowl game 9-3 at this point. And then Air Force. Now, Air Force is a non-Power 5 conference. Now they just this week they played Navy. They played like Navy last week. I know they struggled. They didn't struggle, but it wasn't just what a regular team would do against them. Now, congrats on them being 7-0. That's pretty good. Yeah, the score was 17-6. Now, their best win I would say is probably Wyoming, 34 27. Now, do I think they'll go undefeated the rest of the year? And they'll probably have one loss. You never know, or two. But if they do go undefeated, that's pretty good for them. I could end up maybe seeing going 15 at top max, maybe 14. I mean, you're not really playing anyone, so you can't go up high like a UCF did. Now, number 17, we have Tennessee Volunteers, who come off a loss to Alabama. They played good in the first half against Alabama, but after that, they kind of just fell apart there. So, I mean, I think it's reasonable for them to only drop number 3 spots to number 17, in my opinion. There, and they're one of the highest. They're one of the higher ranked 5-2 teams. Now you'll have one more above them. Then Missouri. Missouri has not done this good in years. Now their only loss is to LSU, which you'll see where they're at soon. So Missouri kind of deserves. I mean, that Missouri has some good wins. One against Kansas State, that last field goal, which was pretty good, if you ask me. Then they just got to win against Kentucky too. Their only, as I said, only losses against LSU, which it was really close, and they're coming down in the very end of the fourth quarter to lose to, so that earns them that spot. Number 15 is the LSU. One loss to Florida State, who's done outstanding this year. Then the other loss, thanks to Ole Miss, if I'm correct. Yeah. So losing those, so two teams they've lost to are great teams, so don't underestimate that. So LSU Tigers, they could make a playoff appearance. It's just really low at this point. They're, I would say, probably the team who could, maybe Missouri could make it, but that's really low. LSU, if they're gonna want to make it, if they're well, I know they want to, but if they're gonna make it, they're gonna have to beat Bama, and then some miraculously beat Georgia, but it's getting really low. Now we have Notre Dame. Their situation's kind of complex. I mean, I don't get it. They beat Louisville, or they lost to Louisville, and then then they lose to Ohio State like really close, and they get their tails whipped by Louisville, and then they wreck USC. It's just a mess. I don't know what I think they fixed whatever was going on, and maybe they can finish out the season, win out the season, maybe, which would be good for them. Maybe I can see them going top 10. Besides that, they're no playoff appearance this year. They're done. Then we got Ole Miss. Their only loss is to Alabama, if I'm correct. I think I am, yeah. Which they're not. Which Alabama is doing good this year too. But Ole Miss, if they can win out, I mean, the only teams Ole Miss this year plays. Let me see. Yeah, Ole Miss plays. Doesn't the toughest opponent? Oh, they play Georgia. So maybe going 9-10-2, which is not bad, right? If they can go only 2 losses here, that earns them in the top 15 at least. So, and they don't play Georgia for a couple of, or 2 weeks or 3. So, I mean, they could be top 10. Ole Miss could, and that could be a game day possibly. Now we got Penn State. They kind of lost it there. I mean, that was a low scoring game, but in the end, they were not the better team than Ohio State. So I would say that's possibly a playoff appearance done. I mean, you got to, if unless Michigan or Ohio State both lose another game and they end up winning against Michigan in some sort of scenario like that. But that's what their place is now. Utah, I think, should be kind of on the lookout because they're a dangerous force in the Pac-12, in my opinion. Now, their only losses to, if I'm correct, is Oregon State, I think. Let me double check that. Got to fact check. Let me look. Yeah, their losses to Oregon State. Now, it was kind of bad loss 21-7, but I feel like they've came back after a great win against USC. Now, they'll really find out if they're good or not this week against Oregon. I feel like the Pac-12 might end up just beating up on each other and knocking out a playoff contender. We'll see, though. Utah has a road ahead of them. They still got 2 more tough opponents. Oregon, this is this week, and then Washington. Number 10 is Oregon State, who beat Utah too. Oregon State, again, another force to be watched out for. The Pac-12 has a lot of teams this year that are kind of pretty good. Oregon State, who they have left to play, is Washington and Oregon. If they can somehow win those, a playoff appearance and Utah too, Oregon State could possibly make a playoff. Now, I don't think will happen, but if they can somehow beat Washington and then Oregon, that could happen. Now, number 9, we got Alabama Crimson Tide. Oops. Coming back up, finally after some few games. Now, Alabama, their only loss is to Texas, who's right above them, as you can see. They're not a bad team. They're not a bad team, is what I'm saying. Texas is not a bad loss. I mean, it is a loss, but they lost early, which is good. What Alabama needs to, and it was a non-conference game too, so Alabama can still win out in the SEC and beat Georgia and then get a playoff appearance. So they're not out of it. Then we got Texas. Their situation's a little tricky. That lost to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has no other ranked opponents, but they did struggle against UCF, so anything can happen. But a way Texas can get in is they beat them in the Big 12 championship if they both make it, which would be tricky then because who you putting in? Because one team beat them in regular season, one beat them in the conference championship. So that would be a tough situation. So at this point, Texas needs Oklahoma to lose a game and then them beat them in Big 12 championship if they both make it, for them to then have Oklahoma that has its 2 losses. We have 1, so we get in. And then number 7's Oregon, who, again, another Pac-12 team, but I think them or Washington are going to represent the Pac-12 in the playoffs. One of the two, both great teams. It's going to come down to if one Oregon or Washington will get beat up by Oregon State or Utah or I think USC. Yeah. So that will be what it is. So here we go. The current playoff bracket according to me. So Washington Huskies drop down 1 and Oklahoma. Florida State goes up past those 2 because they played good against Duke, and Oklahoma and Washington did not look good this week. If Washington plays like that game, which I know they won't, like that against a good team, they're not going to end up going undefeated here. But Washington just needs, if they can win out, which they have some tough opponents, though, is their problem. Right now, they still got USC to play, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State. It was not been the bad. They've been kind of good, and then they kind of fell apart a little bit, but they're still there. So yeah, they're not looking ahead. Now they play Stanford this week, so hopefully they can beat them. They were supposed to beat Arizona State badly, so maybe not. They won't. Then we got number 5, Oklahoma, who in reality, Michigan and Ohio State are not to stay. But one of them, one of the 2 are gonna represent. It's really that. The game Ohio State Michigan play will determine Big Ten, in my opinion, the Big Ten competitor in the playoffs. Because how the Big Ten works is they're split up in West and East, and both Ohio State and Michigan are on the same division. So really, that game will determine that. So in reality, though, Oklahoma is in the playoff bracket, really. So it's gonna be a fight because we have all 5 Power 5 conferences probably gonna represent. What's gonna end up happening is Oklahoma or Washington, vice versa, needs one or the other to lose and to get beat up. But I would see the Pac-12 not even making it just because of how many good teams they have to beat up on each other. Kind of how it works. And number 4 is Florida State with a win against Duke this weekend, which Florida State has some good wins under their belt. The first one would have been LSU, which was a good victory they had there. And then now they just picked up the win against Duke, even better. I don't see how Florida State loses now at this point. They should be able to win out. They don't even play North Carolina. Miami might be the Miami or Florida there's some 2 toughest opponents probably left. But besides that, they should win out and win the ACC and secure a spot in the playoffs. Number 3, Ohio State is just coming off a win against Penn State. Their situation is they got to beat Michigan and obviously win out if they want to make the playoffs, win Big Ten. But their game against Michigan is the deciding factor of them being in the playoffs or not. And same with Michigan, if they just come off a great win against, now they're on bye week, they came off a great win against their rivalry, Michigan State, like 4-0 or something. But them against Ohio State is what it determines who is going for the Big Ten now, with Penn State being knocked out. Number 1, Georgia Bulldogs. Now, Georgia hasn't really – they're in the SEC, so I can't say they haven't played anyone. Their greatest win under their belt right now is the Kentucky win, 51-13, which was insane of a score. Now, Georgia now has only played one ranked team, which was Kentucky. Now, this week they'll play Florida, which is always a fun game to watch. But then next week they'll play Missouri, who has done pretty good. And then after that, they play Ole Miss, then Tennessee. So after Florida, they had 3 ranked opponents ahead of them. So this will really see how good the Bulldogs are then. And that right there is Week 9 playoff bracket presented by UK Wildcat Sports Channel.